So yesterday, the city of Johannesburg's Mayor Herman Mashaba delivered his State of the City address. Some of the issues highlighted were housing, hijacked buildings, violations of bylaws, crime and curbing road fatalities, as well as the city's debt. We've got the mayor sitting right here next to me to answer just a couple of questions. Good to see you, Mayor Mashaba. Thank you very much for coming in.
No, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share with the residents of Johannesburg, but overall the people of South Africa, because without Johannesburg working, South Africa has got absolutely no chance of ever working. Yeah. The Johannesburg has always served as an economic engine for the whole country, so it is very important for people to take interest in the revival of Johannesburg, because the revival of Johannesburg is going to ultimately lead to the revival, economic revival of the entire country. Before we get into
the State of the City address, we need to talk about what happened yesterday in Soweto and different areas as well here in Gauteng. Rubber bullets were fired at the protesters. It was a scene that I imagine you, as a mayor, certainly don't want to see, and none of us want to see something like that, demanding land, decent housing, jobs, and against this prepaid electricity. Let's address their concerns.
You know, Leanne and people of South Africa, we should not really take this protest for granted. I think obviously some of them at the moment are politically driven, but overall our people have got genuine concerns. Just to give you an example of what's happening in the city of Johannesburg, which I inherited, over 300,000 housing backlog, 152,000 of our people on a housing waiting list. Some of them have been in the waiting list since 1995, 1996. A year ago this time, I got this, you remember we had the same protest, and the Minister of Housing National at the time, and Mr. Mashatili, who was Minister of Culture in the province, we started engaging them on this high expectations. And I remember one meeting we had in Soweto, where I actually made it abundantly clear to say to them, to warn them about me refusing to be part of this wild promises until obviously they can demonstrate to me that there's money available, because I don't want to be put in the situation where I go and promise people, whereas I know it, I just really do it. And it is on record in a public meeting. I said to Minister Sisulu and Paul Mashatile at the time, I said, I'm not prepared. This is the days of government officials lying to our people are over. I said to the people, we delayed actually starting the meeting because we were unable to agree on what to tell the people, because they were wanting us to go out and promise people. Yeah. And I said to them, guys, please show me the money so that when we go and promise, I know we can deliver. We delayed and we started, and when I was given an opportunity to speak and the public requesting that I speak, I said the days of government lying to the people are over. What I believe we need to do as government, let us be honest, take our residents into confidence. There are certain things I can't do. Will I be able to fix the streets of Johannesburg overnight? Will I be able to deal with all these electricity outages? I cannot, because I'm sitting in the city of Johannesburg with 170 billion rands of infrastructure backlog. Some of our electricity transformers are 70 years old, built by the old apartheid government for the few whites. Today we're sitting with the city of Johannesburg alone that are run with over 5 million people. Will I be able to address this overnight? It's impossible. Yeah. But at the end of the day, what for me it's important is for people to understand what budget I have and hold me accountable for the budget.
How you spent the budget.
Hold me on the budget. Don't hold me on things I have no control over.
Let's dig a little deeper into some of the concerns. And one of the biggest concerns is this prepaid electricity, which you want to go ahead with. I understand you have to pay for a service. If you're getting a service, you've got to pay for it. And there are huge unpaid bills that are happening. But people are vehemently against this and they cannot afford it. What do you say about this? I mean, are you still going to go ahead with this?
Let me tell you what I'm going ahead with, and I think I'm doing this unapologetically. Roughly just over 2,000 people disappeared on the city's billing system in the 2012-2013. Obviously through the corruption with officials and some businesses in the city. People who can afford to pay. Over 2,000. So those are the people I'm going after. I'm not going after the poor people who cannot really afford. Yeah. Now, I think right now, let me focus on the project Buya Mthetho, which we've launched to deal with all bylaw infringement. I launched that project the middle of January. By end of April, we've already collected in excess of 350 million rands from these people stealing our infrastructure, stealing our services. So that is what I want to focus on. The city of Johannesburg, we did an exercise, is losing between 7 and 10 billion rands every year from people who can afford and stealing our services. That's the reason why we said with all these informal settlements where people don't even have sanitation. So my focus, it is not around a poor resident who cannot afford to pay 20 rands for electricity. And I'm not saying that our people must continue stealing electricity, but let me focus on the real, the big players, people who can afford. People are into some South Africans, some international residents who are in South Africa illegally running supermarkets, running big businesses. They're connected to our electricity grid, like connected to our water. They are not paying for rates. So those are the people that I'm focusing on to ensure that we can collect the 7 to 10 billion rands, because we can imagine if I can get that 7 to 10 billion rands within the next 3-4 years, my capex budget will double. Then we can offer more services to our people.
What about these RDP houses? I know you talk about a housing backlog, but I mean, some residents say that these RDP houses are awarded illegally and that there's a system that really isn't in place because they have to pay a bribe to get them.
Well, I think if you look at the RDP policy, was one of the biggest failures of the new South Africa. Firstly, I think it gets our people to be too dependent on government. But secondly, and more worrying, it's the corrupt allocation of RDP houses. I mean, if you go into our RDP houses today, you look at the level of corruption. Some of the RDP houses occupied by foreign nationals, when our own people have to live in squalor. I don't understand how a foreign national coming from Pakistan or coming from anywhere in the world occupying an RDP house. How did this happen? I think RDP house is meant for our indigent communities and our own people. Why should this happen? So that illustrates the level of corruption. I think we need a new housing policy. As a city of Johannesburg, we right at the tail end of concluding a study to actually present to national government so that we as a city of Johannesburg can take over full 100% control of provision of housing for our poor people and our indigent families. Because the RDP system, it's a failed system, and I don't believe anyone would expect me to continue with a failed policy.
Okay. I need to quickly get into an issue that's quite important. So Johannesburg is in 17 billion rand debt. 5 billion of this has to be paid this year. Now, you've just come out and basically on our sister station SAFM spoken about two sitting ministers, I should say, that have been implicated in tender-related corruption involving over 2 billion rand. Now, this
2.3 billion.
2.3 billion. Are you willing to name them?
Not at this stage. I think why it was important for me to let South Africa know about this. I mean, this is a transaction that happened in 2015. And why it is taking so long is because documentations relating to those contracts were destroyed. I mean, how criminal can we get? I had to go to the High Court to get some of the officials to give us access to their computers because they took their laptops, refused to really give us access to them. I had to go to the High Court, and fortunate enough, the courts agreed with me. And fortunate enough, because they used big legal firms, they used big auditing firms to advise them on these particular matters. Right now, I had to really now get these companies that were advising the city to give us information because the city officials have destroyed this information of a 2.3 billion rand transaction that happened in 2015 just before the elections. But we will get to the bottom of this.
Have you got evidence? Have you got enough evidence that will implicate these two ministers?
It is for that reason I can confidently say two of the ministers were the beneficiaries.
Are you going to take action against these two ministers?
Not only the ministers. Everyone involved in this corruption. 2.3 billion rands. This was
which would halve your debt for the year if you get that back.
You know how many houses I will build with that? The 152,000 people who are on our housing list, I can build them a decent RDP house. Each one of them decent, better than the one that that we have. So we can actually, I mean, this is the money that we can use, the 2.3 billion rands plus the, obviously, overall 18 billion rands of corruption cases that I've uncovered. That's a money that one can use to build a better RDP house for everyone.
Yeah.
So I am not going to just go for the 2 ministers. I'm going to go for everyone. Right now, our group forensic and investigative unit is we're busy right now putting together some of the best legal brains in this country for litigation to go for all those people who stole public monies all these years. We're going to go for them. We go for them personally to make sure that we recover that money.
Mayor, we never have enough time with you, but I thank you very, very much for coming in, for being honest with us here about the state of affairs here in the city of Johannesburg. The Mayor delivered his State of the City address yesterday, also talking about the rampant corruption that happened in the administration before him, and let's hope things will change. Mayor Herman Mashaba, thank you very much for talking to us. A quick break, and then we've got to say shap shap to you.